Hello and welcome to this first tutorial session about gameplay ingredients. Today we're gonna cover very simple basics of level scripting in gameplay ingredients. So first I will create a new project using Unity 2020.3. I'm gonna use a universal render pipeline project and I'm gonna create it under ingredients tutorial. So here we're in the project. It's a universal render pipeline template, so I will get rid of extra assets. So first thing first, we're gonna install gameplay ingredients. So let's go to project settings, package manager, and then we are going to create a scope to registry entry for open UPM. So if you want full instructions about how to add it, you can check out my first video about installing gameplay ingredients. So here I'm adding net.pwig scope and the com.dbreeze of scope. I'm gonna save that, enable preview package. That could come in handy. And now we're going to window, package manager, and then we are going to this entry, my registries. So here what's interesting is gameplay ingredients, click install, and we are good to go. So here it's the gameplay ingredients welcome screen that you can still access if you close it in the window gameplay ingredients welcome screen menu. So here we're gonna perform the first time setup for the project. Here first we will create a gameplay ingredient setting asset for the project. So this is an asset that's going to be created into the resources folder, and here you can check out some of the features. So if you want to get rid of the welcome screen in your project, you can disable it for all users here. Otherwise here you can check this checkbox, so it's only a preference. So there are other options in this gameplay ingredient settings. I will not cover them today, but we're gonna come back in a later tutorial. And then if we click next, we can unpack starter content. So that's gonna be useful for today's tutorial. And here what we want to unpack is universal render pipeline content. So it's gonna basically it's gonna be unpacking some assets. So basically we have other scenes here. So we also have a main menu. Here it is. So it's just a title and some buttons to start the game. And we also have a game level. So this one is here. And this game level is quite straightforward. So we have a bunch of scripts, some environment, light, and basically it's just a first-person game. So if you want to play, you can try it out. And here we are. So here we are roaming in basically white box scene using a player. So how does it work? In this scene we have on start player start script that's gonna basically spawn a player. So if you check this inspector, we have on game manager level start. So this is an event that is called at the startup of the level. So it's not exactly the start of your mono behavior, but it's more the game is ready to start event that is being called by a game manager. So the game manager is an underlying system that can just start the level. If you have, for instance, multiple scenes, it just waits for every scene to be ready, then it starts the actual gameplay. So this level start is called in the editor by a workaround named onStart event. So here it's the onStart, and it's calling editor only logic. It will check if we are working in editor, and then it's gonna spawn the player directly from player start. Otherwise here, if we are in the actual game, it's gonna spawn the player and perform a full screen fade action. So it's gonna be fading out from black the game. So if we play, what happens? I will move the game view here. And when we play, we have a first-person character that is being spawned. So here, about spawning the player. So we have a spawn player action. So in gameplay ingredients, we have events. So it's based on something happens. And then we have actions, what to do. And when the game level manager, we have on message received. And then we can spawn the player or full screen fade action. So it's going to be fading out from black. Okay, so here the spawn player works with a factory, which is a script that handles spawning prefab instances in the scene with some options. So here, for instance, this factory will spawn the first person character prefab on a spawn target, which is the same object. It's going to be spawned in the same scene as target, but you can spawn as a child or even in the doesn't destroy unload scene. This last one is useful if you stream in and out other scenes in your game. Also, there is something useful for the next step is the rip and respawn. So rip and respawn will check for the player if it's alive or not, and it can respawn the player if it's become destroyed. So let's say I have a game where my player can be dead, so I can respawn at the corresponding location. And that's it. So whenever I play, the game manager level start is called and the player is spawned, and then I can roam around. So let's spice a bit the things here. So I'm gonna remove the environment here, and I'm gonna create a platform from which I can fall. So it's here what we're gonna do is just create a recovery system. So what I want to achieve is whenever my player falls from this platform, the player dies and then it's being respawned. So here, if I just play from this platform, I can fall and then I'm gonna fall infinitely. So instead, what I'm gonna do is create a trigger. So it's gonna be a collision detection volume. So here in gameplay ingredients, I have made a pre-configuration of triggers. So it's gonna be here, okay, box trigger, and this box trigger will be placed just below the ground with quite big size. So whenever the player will traverse this trigger, I want the player to be destroyed. So here, what I can do is on trigger event, so the box collider is configured using a trigger, and on trigger, so enter, I'm gonna add an action named destroy object action, and I'm gonna reference it on trigger enter. So destroy object is meant to destroy a bunch of objects that you can define, or you can destroy an instigator. So instigator in some cases can be the game object that triggers this action. So here, if we go up into the chain of command, instigator will be the object that's gonna traverse the trigger, and the trigger will interact with the tag player. So whenever the player traverses the trigger, it's gonna destroy the player. So let's check that. So here I have my player, I'm gonna fall, and here my player is being destroyed, then respawned. So what happens here during some time is just here the camera is stuck, but there is no more player. So it's just because I'm using a cinemachine. So instead of doing that, I can make something a bit more elegant. what I can do is just let the player fall and fade to black. And when I'm full black, then I can destroy my player and wait for it to be spawned again. So here I will add full screen fade action first. And instead of destroying the player here on trigger, I'm gonna add full screen fade to black in 2 seconds. I will reduce to 1. And on complete for the full screen fade action, so it's gonna be when the full screen fade is complete, then I'm gonna destroy the object. So let's check that. Here we are. I'm gonna fall, fade to black, then it's destroyed, then it's respawned. So upon respawn here, I didn't fade back to from black. So here I'm gonna go back to the player start, first person character, and on spawn, what I'm gonna do is just connect this full screen fade action from black in 1 second. So whenever the player is being spawned, I'm just fading back from black. So here, let's play again. Let's fall, fade to black. Let's wait for respawn, and then we are respawned. And that's it. So this is the very first thing we can do for managing a player and have a die and retry system. Something that is a bit annoying as well is you can see there is still the cursor that is roaming around. What I'm gonna do here in the player start is add some more functionality. So I can use a cursor action, and I'm gonna add it to the player spawn. So whenever the player is active, I'm locking the cursor and I'm hiding the cursor. Okay, so here, whenever I'm playing, here I have quite a better feeling in editor. So here it's working. Okay, then next, let's do a final example. So here I want to create on my platform some kind of door that's gonna open when I want to traverse. So in order to do such a door, what I'm gonna do is create a cube, and I'm gonna scale it so it looks like a door. There is one door, another door here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do for these two doors, I'm gonna make a system with a trigger that's gonna open these two, that's gonna move these two cubes whenever I come close, and that's gonna play the reverse animation when the player gets a bit further. So here first, what's gonna do is create a group for all these two doors. So in gameplay ingredients, you can group objects using edit group selected. So here it's the door system. Okay, and what I can do is create a timeline for that. So here I'm going to window sequencing timeline. So for this timeline, I'm gonna create the asset. Okay, I'm gonna put it at the root or even in timeline folder. Door system timeline. Okay, here I'm gonna add the two doors in the timeline. So animation track. I'm gonna rename them door left, door right. Okay, so here when I'm here, my animation will go from, let's say, 0. So let's create keyframes directly for these two doors. and I'm gonna go at 1 second and animate these doors so they are open at 1 second. So here it is. I have a timeline of 1 second long, and here what I need is to control everything. So for this door system, I will add also a trigger. So in gameplay ingredients, events, trigger box, and this trigger will be placed, let's say, here with a size, okay, like that. And then we need to spread it a little, so it's gonna be the area, the sensitive area. So let's say 12 meters, 7 and 7 meters. Okay, so whenever I will enter this trigger, I will need to play this timeline. So on trigger enter, I have an action named timeline control action that I can use, and here it needs to reference director. So here I will drag and drop. Okay, so it's going to be timeline play door system. And then if I play, okay, so the timeline plays automatically first, because here in this door system the play on awake was enabled. So I will just get rid of that, play again. Okay, here it is. So up, whenever I come into the trigger, it's okay, and when I come out, it's not okay anymore. But if I go inside, it's replaying. So that's not exactly what we want. Basically what we need is to play this timeline reverse. So sadly, timeline doesn't have the ability to play reverse implicitly. So this timeline control action that is quite simple cannot achieve that just by that. So in gameplay ingredients, instead of controlling directly the timeline, we have a more elaborate system in order to control the timeline, make it stop at a certain time, playing forwards, reverse. So this is what we call a director control rig. So director control rig, another system in gameplay ingredients that controls something. So here I will reference the door system timeline in the director control rig. So here it's gonna be controlled by the rig instead of being played by itself. Also initial play mode, so it's gonna be a play by default. So if I play, it's gonna be the same as previously. So I don't want for the initial play mode to be play but stop instead. At the initial time 0, because I want my door to be closed. Then what I need is to perform actions on this control rig. And here on this box trigger, I had the timeline control action that was controlling directly the playable director. But I'm gonna remove that. And instead I'm gonna add a director control rig action. So it's gonna act directly on the director control rig instead of the playable director. So here you can see that there are many more options. And here I'm gonna reference the director control rig. So here I will name this action open door. Okay. Open door is gonna set the play mode to play, set the time to 0. So I can either reset the time whenever I call it, or just keep the time. So it's a matter of whether you want to play the full animation or just start by the current state. And of course I'm gonna set a stop time to 1 second. So the animation will play up to 1 second, then stop. So it's gonna be open door, and whenever I want to exit, I'm gonna duplicate this control rig action, paste component as new, and it's gonna be named close door. I'm gonna set the play mode to reverse. Okay, and then I'm gonna set the stop time to 0 seconds. So it's gonna play reverse the timeline down to 0 seconds. And I'm gonna reference this one on trigger exit. So let's test that. Okay, here we are. So I have my character coming, and here it is. So it's controlling the animation to play forwards and reverse. So what is interesting is if you do not reset the time, you can interrupt the animation. So it's quite interesting, because basically the main difference is if in these two control regulations actions I had to set the time to 0, so it would perform the full animation from 0 second to 1 second, and here set time from 1 second to 0 second. Let's check the difference. So it's gonna perform the full animation. So here it's okay, but if I interrupt the animation, you see it's a bit more clunky. So instead, let's not set the time and just assume that the time is correct. Okay, this concludes this tutorial. We will cover more stuff in later videos. So I thank you for watching and hope to see you in a later video. Have a good day.